pick forever going there at number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. Your favorite offensive line?
3 picks later, pick 12, the Dallas Cowboys. Do they need running back help? Sure. They instead decide to bolster the offensive line with Tyler Booker out of Alabama. One of my favorite offensive linemen in this draft class. I thought he had a chance to be a top 15 pick, even though he's a guard only, quotation marks. And for all the knocks we like to take against the Dallas Cowboys, they have made the offensive line a focus. They took Tyler Guyton in the first round. They took Tyler Smith in the first round several years ago. They have Cooper Beebe playing center now, who they drafted last year. And now you have Tyler Booker. So you're giving the offensive line and that offense with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb all the help they need up front. They signed Javonte Williams at running back. They can still circle back, get a running back in day 2 or day 3 if they want to. Incredibly deep running back class. But I think this is the perfect landing spot for Tyler Booker. And right around the range I thought he would come off. I know he didn't run the fast 40 time at the combine. I do not care, because I don't think they have plans to give him the ball, throw him the ball. Just they're going to ask him to block, and that's what he does extremely well.
I don't know if you guys noticed on the graphic, their last 3 first-round pick offensive linemen have all been named Tyler.
There's something there. We found something, the through line to it all, and it is big shoes to fill there on that offensive line with the retirement of Zach Martin. So they're going to be looking to plug some of those holes up front. A measured approach here by Jerry and the Dallas Cowboys going offensive line there. Let's go to defense. Any level, your favorite player. Obviously, we're going to be looking early in this draft.
Abdul Carter, 3rd overall to the New York Giants. It just feels like a layup. If not for Travis Hunter being in this draft class, Abdul Carter would have been the number 1 player on my big board. He ended up being number 2. And he is just learning the position, Rand. He was playing off-ball linebacker until last year, wore the number 11, so reminded a lot of people of Micah Parsons. He's not quite there yet. He's still incredibly raw, but he doesn't have to be the guy in New York because they have Brian Burns, they have Kayvon Thibodeau, they have Dexter Lawrence. I think it's a best-case scenario for a young defensive edge rusher learning that position, coming into that system. I think he's going to eat early and often.
And for me, you got to go with the Atlanta Falcons and what they were able to do with getting Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. Now, was the compensation too much for the future? Yeah, probably. I don't know that I would have given up a future.
We'll see what that first is next year. That's going to determine whether or not this deal was done properly.
Correct. But if you're a Raheem Morris defense, you now have your edge guys coming off the edge that are going to give you that pressure and create those sacks that Atlanta's been missing. And this year they went out in free agency and you signed Leonard Floyd, and then you have Arnold Ebiketie, who is going into the final year of his rookie deal, and now you add 2 dynamic guys that can come off the edge. And then with Jalen Walker, you can kind of play him in multiple spots and move him around and create mismatches for him, lining him up over guards, or even playing him off the ball linebacker. So love what the Falcons did there, getting these 2 dynamic young playmakers.
Yeah, doing 2 for 1 there, making up for lost time as they've continually gone offensive premium player position in the first round. Whether in Carthon, Joe Musso, the Hallis Trophy has a safe home there in Philadelphia, but got plenty of teams trying to knock them off that mantle at the top of the NFC. Going to take a look at our biggest winners and losers here in the NFC, starting with an offensive playmaker. Ryan, your favorite offensive playmaker heading to an NFC team?
My wide receiver 1, excuse me. Someone's on this desk is wide receiver 5, incredibly disrespectful. But Tedero McMillan, as we look for the culprit here, headed to the Carolina Panthers to give Bryce Young some help. And they do need help at wide receiver. We talked perhaps Jalen Walker being an obvious choice here, the linebacker / edge rusher out of Georgia, the 8th overall pick. But they took Tet because, well, they have Adam Thielen and they have Xavier Legette and they have Jalen Coker, who was a fun story last year as an undrafted free agent. Tet McMillan gives them an immediate jump ball, high point, contested catch machine down the field. Does he regularly separate? No, but that's not his game. And Bryce Young is one of the best anticipation throwers among the young quarterbacks. Yeah. Played really well down the stretch, and I think they are turning the corner with Dave Canales, and I love the fit there. They need help on defense, sure, but I think they couldn't pass up Tet McMillan there at number 8.
You got Legette going 6'3". You got Tet now going 6'4", butting his head on 6'5". There's some big targets there for Bryce Young to distribute that ball to. You're going wide receiver as well, but elsewhere.
Going wide receiver, going Matthew Golden to Green Bay. This just screams Matt LaFleur to me, right? And I think when Golden's name was called and they showed the draft room, I saw a little extra smile on LaFleur's face. This guy's the quintessential X wide receiver in that offensive system. And if you know that offensive system, they love to have the guy that's going to stretch the field vertically, where they can take shots for explosive, but also create some of that intermediate game that they like to throw and play in between those numbers. That was the role that Christian Watson was supposed to fill, but he's suffered through injuries, and this is a plug-and-play X-receiver in that offense that's going to create those explosives for him.
And you think of some of the burners that have come out of this program, and It almost felt like a sigh of relief 30 years in the making for Packers fans who finally select a wide receiver in the first overall pick, albeit in front of that crowd there in Ashwaubenon. So there was some praise for this young man who, you made a great point, doesn't get to jump on the PJ anywhere. He's just staying right there in Green Bay. Robbed him of a private jet.
So unfortunate. He's literally going to walk 1 block from the stadium.
Facilities that way.
Facility, and probably to the Hilton Garden Inn that's up the street where he's going to stay.
Well, we're going to keep our eyes here on a couple Longhorns, because when we go to the offensive line, that's once again where your eyes go there. Number 9, Kelvin Banks.
I've always loved Kelvin Banks, and I love the way he plays his game. And he's a guy that I've consistently said he is the model of consistency. And going there, this is a New Orleans pick. They draft a year ahead of a need consistently, and Ryan Ramczyk retired this week. They also announced this week that they're not picking up the 5th-year option of Trevor Penning. And this feels to me kind of like when they took Andres Pete 13th overall in 2015, where you have this lineman that there's no rush to put him out there on the field, but he could probably play guard for you this year as one of your best 5, which is what they did with Andres Pete. Now, guard ended up being the home for Andres Pete, but there were moments where he played some left and right tackle for him. But I do think that Kelvin Banks will eventually be their starting tackle.
He is a top 10 Piripi Penix or London or Bijan or Pitts. This is a commitment back to the trenches there for Atlanta. Talking winners and losers, a holistic approach here in the NFC. Your biggest winner?
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
So Emeka Egbuka, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about him as a potential first-round pick in the millions of mock drafts we did in the last 2 weeks.
Loved him.
You loved him, and you were right. Former wide receiver. Joe knows wide receivers. Ted McMillan aside. But in terms of Emeka Egbuka, in terms of the Ohio State lineage of wide receivers, Emeka Egbuka does not get the credit he deserves, I feel like. It's easy to talk about the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and the Garrett Wilsons, the Chris Olaves, the Jackson Smith and Jigbas. Emeka Egbuka is in that conversation, and he is the most professional receiver, not only in this draft class, but perhaps in the last few draft classes, because he can play slot, play outside, fantastic route runner, and I think Baker Mayfield's going to love him.
And it's to the point of you saying of the multiple positions that he can play. This is a Chris Godwin replacement. And Chris Godwin, he fractured or dislocated his ankle in week 7, I believe. And so they can now afford to bring him along slow, because you have a player that can play that type of role in that offense. And if you talk to some people in Tampa, they will tell you that Chris Godwin is probably the most valuable receiver that they have, because he can do a multitude of things, and he's a presence for them in the run game and sticking his face in there, blocking linebackers, being able to insert.
So maybe a future heir to that throne there. Mike Evans, each day a day older, but still giving you 1K plus. But that is quite a 3-headed monster at full health, a wide receiving core for Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. A big winner in the eyes of both of our experts. A big loser, you guys are on the same page here, but it does come a conditional loss, let's say. Your biggest loser, Ran?
Yeah, you put the Saints, because we've heard that the Saints have been in love with Jackson Dart. So the thing is if you knew, if this is true, then you allowed the Giants to jump you when you had the ammunition to go from 40 to wherever, 25, 26, wherever to take him. And so you miss out on your quarterback. However, you can make a case for now you sit there at 40, you still have a Shador available to you at 40. What do you do? And if they can walk away from at 40 with a quarterback, most notably Shador, then we can flip that and call them a winner.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And the thing about Shador that'll be interesting, it felt like, to Rand's point, that the Saints were higher on Jackson Dart than Shador. But you love the idea of Shador having to play indoors, so you can't make the excuse about the arm strength outdoors in the AFC North, for example, in the wintertime in December. And also, Kellen Moore has a good track record with quarterbacks young and old, and you like that fit, given that they've now drafted Banks at tackle, and they have the playmakers, the wide receiver, starting with Chris Olave.
Ryan, Rand, fantastic stuff. We appreciate the insight, but there's always more work to be done, and you're only as